Welcome back to another FPL video ahead of Game Week 30. This will be my team selection, and I have changed a few of my plans from some of the previous team selection videos that I've uploaded to the channel. So I'm going to discuss my plans for Game Week 30, what I'm going to do, the captaincy, and how I did in Double Gameweek 29, which was a pretty decent week, I think, for a lot of us, but there still were maybe some frustrations here and there. But if you end up enjoying this video, keep on supporting the channel by smashing the like button, subscribing if you're new, and also sharing this video around with anyone who loves FPL and fantasy games in general. Let's get straight into this video and talk about how I did in Double Gameweek 29. A very popular strategy was to use the bench boost in Double Gameweek 29, and that's what I did. Kepa Arrizabalaga got 8 points, a clean sheet in the second game against Liverpool, despite some frustrating moments in the first game there for Chelsea, where they ended up losing 2-0 at home to Aston Villa, but still a decent 8-pointer there for Kepa Arrizabalaga, and the same goes for David Raya. Both of these goalkeepers feature once again in the best wildcard team video. If you want, check that out. I uploaded that to the channel very recently, and Raya, it was kind of the opposite. He did very well in the first game, getting 6 points despite conceding 3 times to Brighton, but then in the second game, Brentford lost 1-0 to Manchester United, and it was only a 2-pointer there. But still, 8 points from my 2 goalkeepers. I couldn't ask for much more. I did have Raya on the bench, but honestly, it doesn't really matter at this point. They ended up getting the same total regardless. The defence was pretty mixed bag, but with Ben Chilwell, after a 0-pointer against Aston Villa, he concluded the game week with a 9-pointer, getting all 3 bonus points against Aston Villa, and he's always involved. He's been a bit unlucky, I think, recently, having disallowed goals or not getting the assists, creating a lot of chances, playing very well, but not getting those FPL points. But it all came together there against Liverpool, and Ben Chilwell is a very good asset on his day, but there's going to be some frustrating moments. He'll either give you a 1 or 2 pointer, or he'll give you maybe a double-digit return or an assist and give you a 9-pointer like he did here with the bonus points. So I really like Ben Chilwell, and Chelsea have just appointed Frank Lampard as their interim manager until the end of the season. Let's see how that impacts the likes of Reece James and Ben Chilwell and their roles. They could become even better FPL options, or even worse than they were under Graham Potter. Let's wait and see. I think Chelsea might struggle a little bit defensively, and I'm not so sure about the defensive double up in the long term, but I could be completely wrong, and Lampard could get the best out of them and have that managerial bounce that Chelsea desperately need from now until the end of the campaign. Then Luke Shaw. This was the most frustrating part, I think, of the week, arguably. He was on course for a clean sheet. United end up keeping it, but he was subbed off just before the 40th minute mark due to injury. So he got the yellow card and didn't give any points whatsoever. The 1-pointer came from the first game against Newcastle, and it really could have been a 6 or 7-pointer after the Brentford match. But there you go. You know, you're going to have these frustrating moments in FPL. It's completely out of your control. And I think those that went with David De Gea would be the ones profiting a little bit more at this moment in time. But Luke Shaw is still a very good way of covering Manchester United's defence. It was Lisandro Martinez, though, getting maximum bonus points there in the second game against Brentford with a fantastic performance there to keep the clean sheet. And then we look across the rest of the defence. Another kind of frustrating 3 points in this case from Ben Mee, and he's been pretty awful for me since I got him in on the wild card. Probably my worst selection, you know, not getting any clean sheets whatsoever and not getting any goals or assists. Instead, it was Pinnock who got the goal in the first game of Double Gameweek 29, and Ben Mee has been nowhere to be seen, and the same could be said for Rico Henry. Then we've gone for Botman, and he got a 2 points against West Ham in a 5-1 victory, but the 7-pointer, the one that really made the difference, was against Manchester United, keeping the clean sheet and also getting a bonus point. So still very happy with Botman overall and the Newcastle defenders. And we could also say the same thing, of course, about Kieran Trippier, a 14-pointer after that mega haul against Man United. And then a bit disappointing against West Ham. I was expecting an attack in return the way West Ham were defending, but still a very solid outing from most of my defenders, with the exception of Luke Shaw and Ben Mee. Another frustrating part of the week was keeping Bukayo Saka and selling Martin Odegaard. So because of the time difference, I'm currently on holiday. I didn't wait until the absolute last seconds of the deadline. The news of Saka being benched against Leeds broke out 5 minutes before the deadline, and I wasn't awake for that, so I confirmed the transfers the day before. I did a deadline stream, talked about my team selection, and also covered all the topics that you wanted answered and also discussed. So in the end, I sold Odegaard, who got an assist and a bonus point, and kept Saka, who only came on for a 1-pointer. Despite Arsenal scoring 4 goals, Saka wasn't involved. So that was very frustrating. and you just wouldn't have expected it. Arteta was very coy, didn't let anything through in his press conferences, but Saka, it looked like he was ill, he wasn't fully ready, and so that was an opportunity there to give Jesus the start, and he was the one that stole the show in terms of the goals with a brace, and that helped Arsenal clinch all 3 points. But very frustrating there with Bukayo Saka, who was on my bench. The rest of my bench actually scored points. He was the only one that failed to return, and it was very frustrating to say the least. But then we go on to Bruno Fernandes, another one who got a yellow card in the second game against Brentford, 2 blanks, and he was a pretty poor transfer in the end. So 2 of the most popular midfielder transfers in Double Gameweek 29, both flopped really. The other one being James Maddison, both of them getting 4-pointers and both of them not delivering as we expected them to. And Bruno Fernandes, you could argue, is suffering a little bit because of Casemiro's absence. I still think Bruno can do the job without him, but of course Casemiro makes a huge difference there to that Man United midfield, and also protecting the defence and allowing Bruno Fernandes to be more focused in the final third, where we can get those goals and assists that we desperately want. And then we go on to Marcus Rashford, a bit of a saving grace here with a 12-pointer. He got the 10-pointer then in the second game against Brentford, and Man United were nowhere to be seen against Newcastle. But not to worry, Marcus Rashford at Old Trafford has been fantastic this season, and he has the most goals of any Premier League player since the World Cup. So he's been absolutely fantastic, despite a bit of a few hiccups, you could say, in recent weeks. And a lot of us would have captained Rashford as well. The same goes for Matoma, who was probably up there in the top 3 or 4 most captain options this week, and he got a 14-pointer. So those of you that went for Matoma over Rashford, fair play. Only a difference of 2 points, but those 2 points can still be very crucial at the end of the season. I've kind of been on the wrong end of a lot of these 50-50 calls where there's not much difference really. There might be just 1 or 2 points separating the captaincy or the most popular captaincy options, but I've gone for the kind of worst choice in that regard. And the other kind of big example would have been Ivan Toney versus Matoma in the previous Double Gameweek 27. I went for Matoma, and in the end, Ivan Toney snatched the kind of pole position and the lead in the dying seconds of that game as well. But still, very happy to have had Matoma, and I think those that went for maybe March and McAllister would have been a bit frustrated because Matoma has been the best Brighton midfielder in the last 3 or 4 game weeks, and I still think he is my favourite going until the end of the season. And the final midfielder, and one that has been very frustrating, is Solly March. He got 8 points, which isn't too bad. He got the assist in the first game, but it's always a case with him about what could have been. We look at the disallowed goal a few weeks ago. We look at so many chances that he creates and also misses. And honestly, on any other given day, he could be producing one of these mega hauls, which he's certainly capable of. But he still outscored some of the most popular midfielder options this week, like Bukayo Saka, Bruno Fernandes, and James Maddison. And he's so cheap. And in some of these games coming up against Spurs and Chelsea, where I may bench him, I think he could do extremely well, and I won't be comfortable having him on my bench because honestly, I could see some returns there, not to mention Double Gameweek 34, which I'm still happy to keep him for, and I'm going to be using the free hit in Blind Gameweek 32. The forward line was the best part of my team without a shadow of a doubt. Harry Kane got a 7-pointer despite getting a yellow card, and also Everton scoring a late equaliser. He was still able to clinch onto 2 bonus points. He got a yellow card, but still got that goal, the penalty, and that was enough to clinch a 7-pointer. Those that were on my bench as part of my bench boost were David Raya, Sven Botman, Bukayo Saka, and Harry Kane. So still a pretty decent return. I think that's 25 points overall. If I had sold Saka and kept Odegaard, it would have been 30 points for my bench boost, which would have been extremely, solid. But still, regardless of all of that, we'll talk about my ranks and whether I got a green or red arrow after this segment of the video. Still very happy though with those on my bench, and also for the most part, the majority of my 50-man squad. There were a few exceptions, of course, like Luke Shaw, Ben Mee, and Bukayo Saka, but the rest, for the most part, was still very solid. Then we go on to the rest of the forward line. Ivan Toney delivering 11 points, 9 points in the first game, a blank against Man United, but still a very solid outing. And he also went through both games unscathed, so there is actually a good argument to keep him for Gameweek 30, and you might be a bit worried about the likes of Erling Haaland. Is he going to get the full 90? I don't think so. And whilst I think he will start, I also recognise there's a real opportunity or a possibility that Haaland will be benched and come on for the last 20 or 30 minutes. So is a transfer of Toney to Haaland absolutely locked in? For some of you, it may well be, but I'm actually considering keeping Ivan Toney, and you'll find out in the team selection portion of this video which side of the spectrum I'm kind of leaning towards. But Ivan Toney is certainly a very good option, and the only concern with him is one more yellow card, and he's suspended for the subsequent game. Then we go to the final forward, and my MVP of Double Gameweek 29, Ollie Watkins, 17 points. I actually thought he could score in both games against Leicester and Chelsea, but I didn't expect him to get bonus points as well and to get 17 points. So a very solid outing by him, and he is probably in the best moment of his career so far. He's scoring goals in pretty much every single game, and he's one of the informed forwards since Unai Emery has taken over Aston Villa. So that was my performance in Double Gameweek 29. Let's now talk about who I captained, my overall rank, the game week points overall. I did take a -4 hit to get to this team, but it still didn't deny me a green arrow. The most popular captaincy option in Double Gameweek 29 was Marcus Rashford. He was my captain. Although I was seriously considering a few others like Matoma, I ended up going for the most popular option just because I thought Rashford would score the most points. It didn't end up being the case, but still, he was one of my highest scoring players in general. Only Trippier, Matoma and Watkins scored more amongst my 15-man squad, so not too many regrets in that regard. It's not like I got someone completely wrong and went for Bruno Fernandes, for example, and I think those of you that went for that are a bit unlucky in that regard as well, and there were a few missed opportunities, I think, against Brentford. Rashford himself could have even scored a second goal or at least got another assist, but it wasn't meant to be, and I got 138 points overall, but with a -4 hit taken into account, that's 134, and my overall points is now well beyond 1,900, and my overall rank has now gone up to 55,000, so a very solid position to be in until the end of the season. I'm well set up for a lot of these game weeks, but there will be some big talking points and a few 50-50 decisions, such as getting Erling Haaland in Game Week 30, the captaincy, where I've got a few different options like Bruno Fernandes, Bukayo Saka, Harry Kane and Marcus Rashford, and if I don't go for Erling Haaland, that could be a stinging point and it could make or break my season. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong. I also need to figure the best free hit team for blank game week 32, as well as the best possible options for the double game week in 34, not to mention a few other doubles will get along the way, most likely in 36 and 37. So there's a lot of talking points from now until the end of the season that will all be covered on this channel. Let's now go to the team selection portion of this video where I talk about my transfer plans, the captaincy, and my overall thoughts heading into game week 30. I have two solid goalkeeper options this week, but I think I'm going to edge it towards Kepa Arrizabalaga away to Wolves, and despite Frank Lampard being appointed as the new manager, I may well end up having a double up in Chelsea defence, which I'm not too sure about, to be quite frank, but I think I'm going to go for Kepa Arrizabalaga between the sticks. Wright is a decent option against Newcastle, but they're in form. They've won some very important games there against West Ham and Man United, and they're one of the most informed teams in England at the moment. So I'm going to go for Kepa Arrizabalaga. I may end up regretting that, and either Kepa or Raya could still haul even with a goal conceded. Following yesterday's game between Manchester United and Brentford, Luke Shaw is now an injury doubt, and Ten Hag said that we won't find out anything more until the scans after a day or so, and we're just waiting for that extra news. And once we have more definitive updates, that's when I can make a decision about whether to sell Luke Shaw, whether to just bench him for now, or something else entirely. But at the time of this recording, he's in my starting 11 at home to Everton. He's got a good chance of a clean sheet, despite Everton picking up some very good results away from home, and especially in home matches, but they can still get that point sometimes. They got one against Stamford Bridge just a few weeks ago, and it wouldn't surprise me if they were able to do that against Man United. I'd still give United the edge, and that's why the likes of Rashford is a great captaincy option, and Luke Shaw has a good chance of a clean sheet still, in my opinion. Then we go to the other two defenders. Chilwell there, a double up in Chelsea defensively against Wolves. I'm not too sure about that now. If another manager like Conte was appointed, or someone a bit more defensive minded, then this could be, just kind of a guaranteed clean sheet and maybe some bonus points there for Chilwell. But right now, I'm just not so sure. I think I'm going to go for this double up still, and it might be a bit of a differential, I think, in Game Week 30. And then the final defender is Kieran Trippier. He speaks for himself. He's away to Brentford. That's a tough fixture, but Newcastle shown some very good form. And my other two defenders on my bench include Ben Mee against Chelsea and also Botman. So I could go for that double up in Newcastle defensively instead of Chelsea, but I don't think I'm going to bench Chilwell. And the same goes for Kepa Arrizabalaga between the sticks. The last time Manchester United faced Everton, Marcus Rashford stole the show in the FA Cup. He even scored a penalty in that game, and he's a great captaincy option this week. There's no doubt about it. Everton are a very difficult team to predict. They're very solid at home, tough to beat, but away from home, they typically are very poor, but they can still get some results here and there. They did it against Chelsea a few weeks ago, and Man United have only scored one goal since winning the Carabao Cup in February. So it hasn't been looking too good there for Man United. Not enough Premier League goals, and they also haven't gotten enough results despite that very important victory against Brentford. It's been very mixed bag for them. So you could argue Man United's ceiling, even the likes of Rashford's, isn't that high in Game Week 30 against Everton at home, but he remains a good captaincy option. Is he the very best? That's debatable. I don't think he's the standout, and there's quite a few different options, and it's going to be a bit tricky to nail on the right one this week. And one player I'm definitely not going to be captaining, I think, is Bruno Fernandes, and obviously that could come back to bite me. He could do extremely well this week, but in recent Premier League matches, very inconsistent. He could give you a 12-pointer or a double-digit return and then go on to blank for free 4 games in a row. It's kind of been what's, the pattern, we could argue, in recent weeks. But before Casemiro's suspensions, Fernandes was pretty much returning in every single game since the World Cup. So things have changed a little bit for the worse. He's been very frustrating so far for those of us that bought him in for Game Week 29, but I think he'll do very well, over the coming weeks. But it might take some time, and he's not someone I'd be confident enough to captain. But let's not forget, he got a brace in the FA Cup against Fulham. He could definitely be the pivotal driving force, you could say, for Man United and their victories. So let's wait and see what Game Week 30 has in store for us. And the same goes for Bukayo Saka. I ended up keeping him. That could end up being a blessing in disguise. Despite costing me 5 points in Game Week 29, he could do extremely well against Liverpool away, West Ham away, Southampton at home, and all these fixtures coming up. And honestly, you could still sell Saka and then bring him back in Game Week 32 on the free hit. So it's not a big deal. Arsenal's fixtures are very poor, but despite that, I still think having 1 or 2 Arsenal players is the way to go because they're the best team in the league at this moment in time. And the final midfielder, and one that I'm definitely not selling, is Mitoma away to Spurs. And I actually would give Brighton the edge in that game. And I think Mitoma could be really important there. And Spurs are awful defensively. Mitoma, Solly March, McAllister, Ferguson. I just don't see Spurs keeping them out. And Brighton have more than enough to score at least 1 or 2 goals, and they could end up getting all 3 Premier League points. One of the biggest questions this week is, do we bring Erling Haaland back in? Is he going to start? And if we sell him, who do we sell to get Erling Haaland? And I wouldn't sell Harry Kane, let's put it that way. He's facing Brighton at home, a very tough fixture. But even if Spurs lose that game, I still back Harry Kane to get an attack in return. And he's just so consistent that even if he blanks here, not to worry, he'll probably return in Game Weeks 31 and 32. So honestly, Harry Kane is not in my thoughts of selling. He's the best FPL option right now, apart from Erling Haaland once he's fully fit, and if he does start all of the remaining games in the Premier League. Now, one transfer I was looking to make was Ivan Toney out for Erling Haaland, but I think I'm going to keep Ivan Toney. Despite facing Newcastle at home, I'm still quite happy to keep him for now until he gets suspended. And I've only got 1 free transfer, and I'm actually a little bit short now of selling Ivan Toney to Erling Haaland. So that also kind of adds on to the misery of keeping Bukayo Saka and selling Martin Odegaard, because I would have had that flexibility to easily do Ivan Toney out to Erling Haaland, and it might ended up being my transfer in Game Week 30. But there you go. I don't have that flexibility. I don't want to take a -4 hit to get Erling Haaland back in, and I'm happy to wait at least another week once we find out more about his fitness. How many minutes is he ready to play? And also Pep's thoughts on the Premier League, and is he going to rotate there a little bit more with those important games in the Champions League coming up against Bayern Munich? But Ivan Toney is still a great option, just like with Harry Kane. He could blank in Game Week 30, but has some good fixtures in Game Weeks 31, 32, and even some of these tough games, you could say like Chelsea. I still think that's a pretty good fixture there for Ivan Toney, where he could do extremely well, and let's see how Chelsea perform under Frank Lampard. So there's a lot to think about, of course, as always, but Ivan Toney is the most sellable, and I'm still keeping him for now, and it might be a bit different to what most FPL managers will be doing this week. And the final forward, and one I'm definitely not looking to sell, is Ollie Watkins. He's in such great form. He's facing Nottingham Forest at home, which is one of the best fixtures you could ask for all season. They don't score that many goals away from home. I'm backing Aston Villa to keep a clean sheet in that game, and Ollie Watkins could be involved in 1 or 2 goals. And you've also got all these other different options Aston Villa have but the main ones I think is a defender, maybe Emi Martinez, and the most important of them all is Ollie Watkins, so I'm very happy to keep. And also he could be in contention for the captaincy, which is something I never thought I'd say in FPL ever, but you have to be open-minded, and when a player shows this kind of form and also shows this level of sustainability, you have to give them credit, and he also has to, be in contention for even the captaincy as well. So that is my starting 11. Let's now go into the captaincy, my bench, and also a few other factors such as Gameweek 31. On the bench, it'd be fairly simple. David Raya will be there, and it's going to be quite a tough kind of call there between him and Kepa Arrizabalaga, and I think I'm going to go for Kepa. I've got Solly March, Botman, and Ben Mee as well on the bench. I'm quite happy to bench all of them, to be fair. I would expect Newcastle and Brentford both to score, and it's a very tough game to call. It could go either way. My prediction is for a draw, so let's just wait and see, but it's a pretty solid bench. It could be plenty of points there once again. It shouldn't be as much as I got in Gameweek 29, but let me not tempt fate too much. And now the remaining question is the captaincy, and I'm very flexible on this. I'm currently on Marcus Rashford and Harry Kane as my vice captain, but I'm seriously considering going a bit different and maybe even going for Ollie Watkins as my captain, or even Bukayo Saka could be one to consider. Bruno Fernandes is another one that if he had shown a bit more consistency in the Premier League, I'd be very happy to go for him over Marcus Rashford and be a bit different, but because of the lack of form in the Premier League, I'm probably going to go for Marcus Rashford instead of Bruno, and if I were to go different, it's Ollie Watkins that I'm kind of highlighting as my main differential and someone that could really boost me up the ranks, especially if I put the armband on him. So now let's go to FPL.team, show you how my team would look like in Gameweek 31, where I'd have 2 free transfers, because in Gameweek 30, most likely anyway, I'd be rolling the transfer and not bringing in Erling Haaland. As I've covered extensively on this channel, my plan is to free hit in blank Gameweek 32. So I want to get some transfers in here done in Gameweek 31 and bring in possibly the likes of a Stupinian, who'd most likely come in for Ben Mee, and then I've got a bit more flexibility in terms of who my second transfer would be, but the plan would be to bolster my Double Gameweek 34 players, and I don't have to think about blank Gameweek 32 because that would be a clean slate, and that would be a free hit where it'd just be a team for 1 week, and then I go back to Gameweek 33 with only 1 free transfer, regardless if I kind of roll the transfer in Gameweek 31. Remember that if you are going to free hit in 32, if you decide to maybe roll the transfer in 31, that makes no impact. You won't have 2 free transfers heading into Gameweek 33. That's very important to know, and that's why my plan would be to use both free transfers, whether now in Gameweek 30, but most likely I think I'm going to use both in Gameweek 31. And Stupinian is one that I'd probably bench in 31, but I'm still going to bring him in to bolster my squad for the last 4, 5, 6 game weeks of the season, including that double in Game Week 34. So if we look at FPL.team right now, I'd have plenty of enough money. As you can see, 3.4 million left in the bank. Ben, we would make way for Stupinian. And then my second transfer is still up in the air. It remains to be seen. And I wouldn't have enough to do Ivan Toney to Erling Haaland, so that could be a bit of an issue. Erling Haaland could get the start against Leicester by that time, and he will be the most popular captaincy option. So that could be something that costs me a little bit. I might even end up taking a -4 hit if I really want to bring Erling Haaland back in. But I definitely want to get Stupinian into my ranks and get that third Brighton player once again. And Stupinian was in my team, but I sold him in Game Week 28. It hasn't really worked out too much so far, but Stupinian will do a very good job, I think, for the last 4 or 5 game weeks of the season. So that is my plans for Game Week 31 as well, to definitely get Stupinian back in and then use my second free transfer. But at this moment in time, I'm open-minded and I'll wait and see what happens in Game Week 30 as well, and any other bits of news that we may get before the Game Week 31 deadline as well. And in terms of the captaincy in that week, I'm looking to potentially go a bit different, go against the popular Marcus Rashford and Erling Haaland captaincy and go for someone like Harry Kane or even Bukayo Saka against West Ham away. If West Ham defend the way they did against Newcastle, they do against Arsenal, I mean, they have no chance really, and Saka could have an absolute field day. But a lot of ifs, buts and maybes. I don't expect that to be the case, and it could end up being Erling Haaland being brought back in Game Week 31, and he'll be my boring template captaincy pick. But thank you very much for watching this video. If you end up enjoying it or finding it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check the links in the description below for the Patreon, channel memberships, Discord server, and the FPL League. All of that stuff is there. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 30 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.